Hello, this is week 5 in the second part of the class that begins Tuesday, March 31st, and then Thursday, April 2nd. And we are doing the pre-Socratics this week. Then in this part, this section, we do, in addition to the pre-Socratics, also the sophists and Socrates and Plato. Okay, so we stay with the pre-Socratics this week, week 5, and then next week. This week we are doing half of the book. Basically, this is what you're reading, right? And we are doing the tradition from Thales, the first pre-Socratic philosopher, to Heraclitus, and then next time from Parmenides on. Okay, but let me say a few words. First of all, pre-Socratics means right philosophers who came before Socrates. We'll speak about Socrates later. Okay, to give you a sense of the time. Socrates dies in the year 399 BC, so he lives in the fourth, in the fifth century, right? He dies at the beginning of the fourth century BC. He lives in the fifth. So the philosophers that came before him from the seventh to the fifth century BC, they are now called precisely pre-Socratics. Okay, now this philosophy started outside Greece. Okay, it was in the area that today is part of Turkey, Anatolia, basically Asia Minor, the Middle East, right? Turkey is most of it is in Asia, part of it is in Europe, right? Istanbul itself is divided between Europe and Asia. So in any case, that's where philosophy began. And then also in some areas of southern Italy, they were all colonized by the Greeks. So the language is Greek. They are considered Greek philosophers. Okay, so the first school, the first philosopher that we know of, his name is Thales. You will find in the book, and he was part of this school called Milesian because Thales, then Anaximander and Anaximenes, they were living they were from Miletus, which is a city today near Izmir, right? I mean, today there are ruins of Miletus only. And so that's the first school, and then we move on with other philosophers living in more or less the same area. But in any case, what's important, because we don't have much time, from the philosophical point of view, what happens? It happens that these philosophers ask a question that will remain in place throughout pre-Socratic philosophy. So I want you to think about and philosophy in general. We already spoke about metaphysics, right? At the beginning of the semester, remember the study of the essence of reality, not simply reality, meaning not simply the reality which is there in front of us, but the essence of reality. Remember the split, the problem, the split, the distance between right appearance and what we may call essence. Okay, what seems to be the case, what in fact is the case, and so on and so forth. This is the problem of philosophy. Okay, so when they ask the question what is it, and they want to answer this question by way of thinking, right, without relying on any account from the tradition and so on, mythological account, whatever that might be. So then they encounter a difficulty. Okay, what is it? It is difficult, impossible, maybe to answer this question because it changes. It keeps changing, right? Now it is X, later it is Y. So what is it? We don't know. So there is this hypothesis that they make, Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, the others. Okay, the hypothesis that maybe there is some underlying nature at a deeper level, right? An underlying nature that is the arche. Arche, you will find the word in the pre-Socratic reader. And this is considered to be the common substance that holds everything together, and the first principle. What is this arche that maybe doesn't change? Everything changes at the level of appearance. That's what we see. We see change, but perhaps there is something that does not change. That's the arche, right? So then, they gave different answers to this question. The answer in itself is not the most important thing for us. Consider that as well. For Thales, the answer was water. It is water. For Anaximander, it is this concept that you will find in the book Apeiron, 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 which is the boundless, that which has no limits, which is infinite, and indeterminate for Anaximander, and then Anaximenes says no, it is Ea, which is still infinite, it is still boundless, but it is determinate. We know what it is. It is Ea. Okay, I will focus on a fragment, a passage from a fragment from Anaximander, the second philosopher, also because that's the question that I suggest, at least, that you can write on in your right, remember, discussion board entry. But then, before I get there, there are other philosophers that you should also read in the book. For example, the section on Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans. For Pythagoras, this arche, the common substance, and the first principle, it will be numbers, right? Um, Pythagoras is also the founder of mathematics. So we skip Xenophanes for now, and then you get to Heraclitus, who is, together with Parmenides, that we will speak about next time. He really is at the center of the pre-Socratic tradition. Okay, what Heraclitus from Ephesus, a city now again ruins, near Miletus, still in the area around, not too far from Izmir. Izmir is the third largest city in Turkey today, right? So, in any case, Ephesus says, look, I mean, the question that everybody asks, right, what is it that seems to run into problems, that there is this difficulty, we cannot answer the question because it keeps changing. It reality keeps changing, what we see changes. He says, but that's what it is. Change itself is a reality. You don't have to look further. Okay, so he, in a sense, corrects. Okay, the method of inquiry. I mean, he says it's not a problem. The fact that we can't answer the question what is it because it changes is actually the problem can be eliminated because again change itself, the process, the constant process of change, that is precisely reality. Okay, and the element that he uses to describes that process of change is fire. Okay, instead of water, aperon, air, fire, because fire keeps changing and so on. Heraclitus is very important. We can go into that in so you read especially the fragments in the section of Heraclitus about the paradoxes, for example the paradox of the river and other things, to which I'll go back in a moment. Okay, so let me now, again, because our time is limited, read this passage from the Anaximander fragment that you find on page right 17. This is the last four lines, okay, of fragment 9, about again Anaximander, the second philosopher. Okay, so he says the things that are perish into the things from which they come to be, according to necessity, for they pay penalty and retribution to each other for their injustice in accordance with the ordering of time. Okay, so now this again, I can go to deep into that, but basically what we see here that we already saw in Thales, I mean, what Aristotle, for example, says about Thales, because very often, what we know of the pre-Socratics is precisely testimonia, things that other people, right, later people said about them. Okay, so in any case, what Aristotle says of Thales describes the same paradigm, the same model, whereby there is a cycle, okay, a cycle which we can understand as the cycle of appearance, okay. Things come to be, they appear to come. Coming to be is different from being. Coming to be, becoming, right? Becoming, coming to be means coming into appearance, right? And then so whatever comes to be also goes away, passes away. Generation, destruction, birth, death, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there is this cycle of appearance, but there is also something that ideally, right, remains there throughout. And this is what Anaximander, again, it's very complex what he says, but I just keep to this, okay? The things that are, whatever we see, right, perish, right? Go down again into the things from which they come to be. I hope that you see the cycle, right, in this statement, right? And then he says that this happens according to necessity. It is this way because it must be this way, and this necessity is ultimately time as well. Time does the ordering, and then of course there is this paying penalty and retribution to each other for their injustice, which means again it's not a juridical language that he's using, but cosmic and metaphysical, right? I mean, basically, the winter has to go so that the spring may come, and then the summer, and so on and so forth. The hot, the cold, they cannot be there, both of them at the same time. Okay, so one has to go for so that the other may actually come into appearance, okay, into being. In any case, I hope that this is these are just a few elements for you to elaborate on. Then do the reading. For example, Heraclitus. Read also, right, Thales and Anaximenes. Again, they say, there are important things there too, especially in the section on Anaximenes, but we can't go into that now. Remember that in Anaximenes, instead of right, because I mentioned that at the beginning, instead of apeiron, because apeiron is the common the arche, the common substance for Anaximander, boundless, okay? Ea will be the same thing for Anaximenes, okay? But then when you go to Heraclitus, maybe, just pay particularly attention to fragments 39, 40, and 41. They are beautiful, right? I mean, these are the typical paradoxes of Heraclitus. I mean, about the river, right? I mean, I just read the last formulation of it, 41, where he says, we step into and we do not step into the same rivers, we are and we are not. Okay, so in Heraclitus, basically what we have, because as I mentioned before, he says the fact that things change, that everything changes, that is not a problem. I mean, again, it's not that we had to go beyond that in order to understand the essence of reality. That is reality itself, okay? It is and it is not. I mean, reality is this constant going from being to nothing. We are and we are not. We step into and we do not step into. Okay, so this is called dialectics. It is precisely the unity of opposites, whereby we wouldn't have reality as a whole. Okay, so this can be understood in many ways at the concrete level, right? I am, for example, what I am now is different from what I used to be 10 years ago, but I wouldn't be what I am without that not. I am not. I am no longer what I used to be, but this no longer is included, is contained in what I am now. Right, so I am and I am not. I am also, I am not what I will be in the future. The not yet of the future is precisely not yet there. However, my existence is open to that future. I mean, without this openness, again, I wouldn't be what I am. So this no longer of the past and the not yet of the future, these two negatives, right? They constitute what I am now, and so ultimately the real picture, let's say, of what I am, my real reality is made of both situations, both dimensions, what seems to be positive, I am, and what seems to be negative. But it is not negative altogether in the same sense in which we saw this in this class with Lao Tzu, right? We have the negative, remember, the empty vessel, the empty room, what seems to be nothing, what seems to be simply, empty space, is not nothing after all, in the absolute sense. It is still something, it is constitutive of reality as a whole. Okay, so for Heraclitus, so you can speak about Anaximander in your uh, discussion entry, right? But also about Heraclitus, who is very important in this tradition. Okay, for Heraclitus, we have both dimension, okay, of being and nothing, and this is what then makes up, right, the idea of becoming, change. Becoming and change are the same. Becoming, right, there is coming to be. What comes to be is not there to begin with, because if something is already there, it doesn't have to come to be. Okay, so then another important fragment, and then I stop there because we wouldn't have the time, that you can look at, very short, very dense perhaps, but very important, is fragment 55 on page 46, where we read about Heraclitus. Okay, this is another philosopher writing about him. Changing it rests. These three words, okay? Changing it rests. To rest in the sense of remaining there, to remain there, to abide, not to go away, right? So it remains there by changing, precisely, because think about this. I mean, if everything changes, right? Change itself does not change. Okay, change itself is permanent, right? So there is another paradox here, another contradiction. But contradiction for Heraclitus is not a problem. Contradiction is actually, the structure and the motto of reality. Okay, changing it rests. It stays there. It remains there precisely by keep changing. It is a constant process of change, right, that we are witnessing. Okay, so this constant process, by being constant, precisely, we see that it is permanent. Okay, so, and permanence and change, of course, are opposites, but it is this the great, idea that we find in Heraclitus. And actually, next time, when we move to the next part of this section on these 2 weeks on pre-Socratic philosophy, you will see the first philosopher that we are going to consider next time, Parmenides. Parmenides, right? He says that contrary to what Heraclitus says, or at least they seem to be holding opposite positions, right? He says that nothing changes. Okay, Heraclitus says everything flows, the river, everything, the process of change, constant process of change, everything changes, everything flows. Parmenides will say nothing changes, and then he will, put forward, if you will, this concept of, we will see that he speaks about permanence. But we already saw that Heraclitus does not deny permanence. The only thing is that he says that the permanent, constant thing, which is not a thing, a process, the process is that will change itself. Okay, so then we will see what we can make of this apparent opposition between right, Heraclitus and Parmenides next time. They are the central philosophers in this pre-Socratic tradition. Okay, I hope that this was that it might be helpful. Okay, do the reading. Okay, it's a short book. I mean, the passages may be at times dense, difficult, but use your interpretive okay tools as well. Be inventive. Try to unpack the meaning, and I hope that what I said may help you in that process. Okay, write the discussion entry, write discussion board entry, and then next week, okay, I will do, like I said, one video per week, okay, from now on.